Saint of the Day. April 26th. Saint Marcellinus. 29th Pope, birth name, Marcellinus. Born, Rome, the Western Roman Empire. Died, 304 AD Rome, the Western Roman Empire. Feast, April 26th. Pope Marcellinus was the Bishop of Rome or Pope from June 30, 296 to his death in 304. According to the Liberian Catalogue, he was a Roman, the son of a certain Projectus. His predecessor was Pope Caius. Pope Marcellinus ruled the Church of Rome for 9 years and 4 months. By order of Emperors Diocletian and Maximian, he was taken prisoner and brought forward to offer sacrifice to the idols. At first, he refused and was threatened with various kinds of torture, and for fear of the threatened suffering he put down 2 grains of incense in sacrifice to the gods. This gave great joy to the infidels but caused the faithful immense sadness. However, under a weak head, members rise up and make little of the threats of the princes, so the faithful came to the Pope and reproached him severely. He realized the gravity of his error and offered himself to be judged by a council of bishops. The bishops responded, "It is not possible for the Supreme Pontiff to be judged by anyone, but you yourself weigh your case in your own mind and pronounce your own judgment." The Pope, repentant, lamented his fault and deposed himself, but the whole gathering immediately re-elected him. When the emperors heard of this, they had him arrested again. He absolutely refused to offer sacrifice to the idols, so they sentenced him to be beheaded. Then the persecution was renewed with such a fury that in 1 month 17,000 Christians were put to death. When Marcellinus was about to be beheaded, he declared himself unworthy of Christian burial and excommunicated all who might presume to bury him. Thus, his body lay above ground for 35 days. At the end of that time, the Apostle Peter appeared to Marcellus, who had succeeded as Pope, and said, "Brother Marcellus, why do you not bury me?" Marcellus replied, "Have you not yet been buried, my lord?" Peter, "I consider myself unburied as long as Marcellinus is unburied." "But don't you know, my lord," Marcellus asked, "that he laid a curse on anyone who buried him?" Peter, "Is it not written that he who humbles himself shall be exalted? You should have kept this in mind. Now go and bury him at my feet." Marcellus went straight away and carried out the orders laudably. Comments. There are many aspects worthy of attention in this narration of the Golden Legend. First, it is interesting to see how human misery responds in face of fear. Pope Marcellinus had a horror to burn incense to the idols, so he only took 2 grains to burn, hoping to fool his own conscience. Actually, if a person were to burn 1 grain of incense or a whole handful, the act of idolatry is the same. The pagans understood that perfectly. The symbolic act had been made, and the Pope had apostatized. This was the reason for their joy. Second, the faithful Catholics also comprehended it perfectly. They came to reproach him and he realized the significance of his action. It is curious to see that until that moment, he had not faced the enormity of his own sin. It was necessary for the faithful to come and show him. Then, he repented and asked the bishops to judge him. The repentance was good, but the request to be judged by the bishops was another mistake of Pope Marcellinus. He was acting against canon law since no one can judge the Pope. The faithful bishops showed him that this was not possible. They reminded him that no one could judge him, rather, he should judge himself. He did so and renounced his own position as Pope. Third, the bishops re-elected him. I don't think that the bishops acted correctly in re-electing him. A Pope who had apostatized from the Catholic faith, becoming an idolater, should not be re-elected unless they had a divine premonition to do so, which is what Blessed Vorigin insinuates in his narration above. Fourth, reinvested as Pope, he was again brought before the idols to burn incense. This time he refused and died as a consequence of it. His final fidelity is the best refutation of his first villainous attitude. He died with complete repentance for his first sin. Fifth, at that time, when the Catholics died as martyrs in the arena or by some other torment, their bodies were left exposed for the crows to eat. Then, at night, the Catholics would go and take their bodies, bring them to the catacombs and give them a Catholic burial. Sometimes, a Mass would be said over the body, which is the highest honor anyone can expect before it was given a dignified burial. Aware of the atrocious apostasy he had committed, Saint Marcellinus wanted to prevent this honor for his body, so he excommunicated anyone who would try to bury him. He wanted to suffer this humiliation of his body as a punishment for his crime. 6th, we have the apparition of Saint Peter. It is a beautiful story demonstrating how Saint Peter shows solidarity with all the popes through history. So, Saint Peter asked, "Why don't you bury me?" This is because any legitimate pope is, in his mission, a continuation of Saint Peter. His command that revoked Marcellinus' order did not violate canon law, since one pope can revoke a positive law of another. Therefore, the excommunication set by Saint Marcellinus was lifted by his successor. In an extreme act of mercy, Saint Peter gave an order for that poor apostate and humble martyr to be buried near his own sepulchre. 7th, should we consider this report as true or false? The Golden Legend cannot be considered an indisputable historical source. It reports facts that are true along with some others that are not exact, where a bit of imagination enters, along with a great deal of good spirit and sense of the marvelous. To certify the credibility of the essential part of this account, I can tell you that analogous details regarding Saint Marcellinus' apostasy, repentance, and martyrdom are also reported in the Roman Pontifical, which is a quite serious source. But, there is a lesson in this account of the Golden Legend that is valid forever. It is the glory given to God by a repentant sinner. There is no worse possible sin than apostasy. Even homicide in many ways is not as evil as apostasy. It is understandable, for faith is the root of all virtues, and as such, it is the most precious of all virtues. Hence, since Saint Marcellinus sinned against faith, he gravely denied his own mission. He had been chosen pope to confirm his flock in the faith. When he apostatized, he denied his mission and led the faithful to do the same. He gave a great scandal, inviting the faithful to follow his very bad example. Nonetheless, after all this, he sincerely and deeply repented, so completely that Saint Peter honored him by ordering that his body be buried near his own sepulchre. Besides this moral lesson, there is also a historical one. It is to see how natural it was for the medieval man to accept that a pope would sin. The Golden Legend was composed in the Middle Ages when no one would be surprised at the apostasy of a pope. The Catholic sense was so strong that it did not go into shock at the possibility of a pope apostatizing. I consider this a marvel of the Catholic sense. This book circulated for centuries reporting this story without any problem. Today this Catholic sense is weakened. Should one merely raise the possibility of an apostate pope, the objection rises, but if he can apostatize, he is not infallible. The answer is easy. Infallibility is either restricted to some special occasions or is linked to the constant teaching of the Church through the centuries. When Pope Marcellinus burned incense to the idols, neither of these meanings would apply to his action. Therefore, he apostatized, left the faith, and left the Church. It is possible for this to happen with a pope like any other man. Papal infallibility was not tarnished by his crime.